Hello Scout family, it's the W Scout here with some more UK Truth News. In one of my previous videos I said that the British public don't like the police. Now okay, that was a bit of a glib way of saying it. In reality, the British public are losing a lot of trust and faith in the police, and this event, this article in Metro newspaper from a couple of days ago, sort of goes quite a way of explaining why this is happening, and this should be brought to light because I'm going to play my part and not let this guy just get away with not everyone knowing about what he did. So let's take a look, jump into it with some UK Real Truth News. Okay folks, here's a headline from Metro newspaper a couple of days ago. Met cop admits he's a serial rapist. This guy, David Carrick, and he raped over 43 people and got away with it for years. So let's look at why people are losing faith in the police. Back before the 60s, you had your friendly neighbourhood Bobby. He would know everyone, he would have his own unique way of policing, and he'd give you a slap round the ear if you needed it, if you was a young whippersnapper, but he was respected and he didn't abuse his authority. Now, that changed, or started to change in the 60s, when the world saw something it had never seen before, and that was a rise in anarchistic sort of feelings, emotions between young people. Counterculture started coming in, drugs, you had mods, you had rockers, you had hippies, and also, you know, they had to get a bit tougher with their policing. So, in the 70s, we saw riots, Notting Hill riots, and it was a tough one for the police, with constantly all through the 70s race riots going on, fueled by right-wing groups and militant black activist groups in the UK. Then we get up to the 1980s and we have the Brixton riots. Now, that obviously fueled more race wars between the police and the black population. The mother of one of the suspects who started the riot, Cherry Groats, was shot. How? Well, that's a long story, but that obviously didn't help relations. So, next come in the 80s, the Broadwater Farm riots. This one was a hot one because a policeman was killed. In fact, he was killed, he was tortured and killed. His name was PC Keith Blakelock. Now, whether he was a policeman or not, you know, he died a horrible death, and 4 people were imprisoned for it, but the main guy was this guy, Winston Silcott, who admitted it in the end. In fact, he actually took a pleasure in admitting it. Anyway, we jump from the 80s and we go into the 90s. More riots with the poll tax riots. The poll tax was a complete injustice in itself. The government just charging more money for amenities which were never kept and upheld. It was just an excuse for more money. And the thing is, it clashed with the ecstasy generation of the 90s, where people wanted to be free. People had some fight in them, you know, they could see through the lies. So police had to get rougher and tougher. With that, we see changes in the police and in their uniforms themselves. They get more tactical, more ready for a fight, should we say. You're seeing more armed police officers now, and they're looking more like members of a special forces team than they are a policeman. And younger people are also joining, but their attitude is changing. It would be easier, you know, if we could just put it down to that old saying of, oh, well, he must have been bullied at school. Unfortunately, it's not. So let's look at why. If only it could be that simple, I would have an answer to this. But let's look at some things that may have been a catalyst for this. So, from the 50s onwards, people in the UK were generally still living with the morals and the values they were brought up with for the last 40 years, which were good, healthy morals and values. There was nothing to come along and rock the boat in the sense of anarchy or different ways of thinking, and young people knew their place. That sounds draconian, but it's true. Now, in the 60s, the world saw something that it had never experienced before, and that was a breakaway from those morals, values and behaviour of the younger generations. There was a lot of things happening, counterculture, mods, rockers, hippies, music, drugs, and all this changed the face of how people behaved, younger people behaved. Now, that didn't just end in the 60s, it went on through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And it's only really now, in the millennium, in the 2000s, that we see sort of a settling down of the anarchistic ways of younger people. Every person is a victim, in a sense, of their generation. What I mean by that is people are programmed during their early years of life, and whatever the media, the law, and society in general says are the signs of the times. The way you should act, the way you should behave, the things you should believe. So things change, and above that, people themselves change. So now what we're seeing is a rougher, tougher way of policing because of the start of the counterculture in the 60s and all the way through to the things we've just watched, riots, everything. And the days of the Bobby on the beat are long dead. The police now tend to join, people tend to join the police at a younger age. And being a police officer obviously comes with a position of power, trust, and without and respect. But they can't gain respect unless they honour the first two things, and in the power sense, use that power legitimately and not in a forceful or threatening way, which tends to be happening now with the police. And they've become very much faceless authoritarians. And in the case of this police officer, with what he's done, I'm not just saying it's the police, anyone could have done this, and people do slip through the net in vetting procedures, but for him to get away with that for as long as he did, even his colleagues knew that he was a complete tosser, and it should have been looked into. It wasn't. And this is, again, just another example of why people have lost faith in the UK police. So there it is, folks. What a complete arsehole this guy is. He imprisoned his victims. He urinated on them. He locked them up in cupboards under the stairs. He got them to do house chores naked whilst telling them that they were ugly and disgusting and weren't worth to be alive. I mean, I've got no words, I'm fuming. But anyway, he's been brought to light. We've dragged him out into the light like I said we would all these evil, demonic bastards. I'm your Taboo Scout. Watch out for the next video. It's going to be a good one. Hopefully interviewing someone whose member of his family was possessed by Islamic jinn. So that's going to be a hot one. Okay, folks, I'm your Scout. I will check you out. Scout 12.